This past May, An Army at Dawn, The Day of Battle, and The Guns at Last Light was the third in the trilogy. You can see the phone numbers up on the screen. If you would like to talk with Mr. Atkinson about World War II, about his trilogy, he'll be joining us in about 2 minutes. 202 is the area code, 585-3890. If you live in the East and Central time zones, 585-3891 for those of you in the Mountain and Pacific time zones. If you can't get through on the phone lines, you can send a tweet. @BookTV is our Twitter handle, or you can make a comment on our Facebook page, facebook.com/BookTV. And this will be the final event from this year's National Book Festival in Washington, D.C. This is the 13th annual. It began in 2001. It's been held on the Mall every year since that first year when it was held on the Capitol grounds. And we're pleased that we were able to cover both days live. And everything that you've seen today, if you've been watching with us all day, it will all re-air this evening at 1 a.m. Eastern time in the overnight, so you'll be able to see the whole thing. But go ahead and dial in for Rick Atkinson. He'll be over here in just a minute. And in the meantime, we're going to take a call from Fred in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. Fred, thanks for holding. What's your question for Rick Atkinson?
Well, more of an assessment, because my feeling is that the great tragedy of World War II really was the entire Italian campaign, a totally unnecessary, huge loss of life. And I was wondering, I wanted to hear Mr. Atkinson's assessment of Mark Clark and the way he conducted that campaign, and that's basically it.
Fred, did you read The Day of Battle, by the way?
No, I read the last book. I read the third book.
Okay. The Day of Battle, he spends quite a bit of time on Mark Clark in the Italian campaign, but once Mr. Atkinson gets over here, we will ask him about that. Next call is Gail in San Antonio. Hi, Gail.
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
The question is, why didn't Hitler cross the channel into England? And if he had done so, would the English have used gas?
Okay, we will ask him that question as well. 202 is the area code, 585-3890. If you live in the East and Central time zones, 585-3891 for those of you in the Mountain and Pacific time zones. We're joined now by Rick Atkinson, who you've been listening to in the History and Biography tent. Mr. Atkinson, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Peter.
Fred in Pennsylvania called just a minute ago, and he wondered about the Italian campaign. He thought that was the biggest disaster of the war, and specifically about Mark Clark. General Clark, and I told him that in The Day of Battle you spend quite a bit of time on Mark Clark. Yeah. So if you would, recount the Italian campaign.
You know, Mark Clark has been hit pretty hard by many historians. I think I'm probably more generous to him than most. I think that he actually is a pretty capable battle commander. Among other things, there are 23,000 American soldiers killed in Italy in World War II. And not every commander is cut out to take those kinds of casualties and to be able to sustain the kind of emotional weight that brings. And Clark can do it. You can't blame Clark for being in Italy. He's there because he's told to be there. The Italian campaign makes some sense if you want air bases in southern Italy. Once you get those, which we do in the early fall of 1944, it makes less sense as you slug your way up the Apennine Mountains all the way till May of 1945. It will be argued about as long as people are reading about World War II.
We had another call, and this was from Gail in San Antonio. Why didn't Hitler cross the English Channel when he had the opportunity, or if he did have the opportunity, and if so, would he have finished off England at that point?
Well, he wanted to, and he had drawn very careful plans for the invasion of England. One thing in particular stopped him, and that was he never had air superiority. And he knew that even though the English Channel is not very wide, that if you do not control the air, if in fact those British Spitfires that have prevailed in the Battle of Britain in 1940 have free access to your invasion force coming by sea, that it will end in disaster. You've got to have air protection to mount an amphibious operation. Hitler knew that, and it stopped him from launching Operation Sea Lion. The second part of the question?
Would he have finished off England?
Well, would he have finished off England if they'd managed to get across the English Channel? You have to believe that things would have gone very badly. Now, the British Isles are pretty big. It's 800 miles from south to north, and there would have been a guerrilla campaign of some sort, certainly. But it's hard to imagine that the British would have been able to prevail had he gotten his forces across the English Channel.
Rick Atkinson, total deaths in World War II?
About 60 million.
Total costs?
Oh, gosh. Well, to the United States alone, if you calculate in 2012 dollars, it's about $4 trillion.
$4 trillion.
Yeah. Now, to the entire world, I don't know. I don't know that anybody would know.
Next call for Rick Atkinson comes from Herb in Weatherford, Texas. Herb, you're on Book TV on C-SPAN 2 with author Rick Atkinson.
Yes, sir. Mr. Atkinson, it's an honor to talk to you. I just finished reading your books back to back to back, and a little postscript on dealing with my father. My father fought in World War II and fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and in Aachen he received the Bronze Star at Aachen and in Purple Heart in the Battle of the Bulge. And they call that our father's generation the greatest generation, and I kind of deal with that with my father, who was, you were talking about the draft. My father was the youngest of 15 and quit school in the 5th grade and went to work, was drafted into the Army at 18, was blind in one eye, went to World War II, sent his paycheck home to his mother in support of the family. My mother waited 5 years to marry him, and I understand why now. He was in 60 or 70% disability, walked with a slight limp, which you would not notice, and his whole life would never even get a handicap parking sticker. And he came back from that war. I only saw my father cry 3 times in his life. That's when his mother died and right before he died. And the other time, my mother said, was during the Gulf War. They were sitting there watching it on TV, and she looked over at him and tears were coming down his cheeks. And I know now from reading your books where he went back to in his life to that war experience. And I just want you to know that your book is absolutely on the mark with so many things. And I've read several books, but I kind of lucked upon yours. And I'll end with this. I have a question. You deal with the European war. I'm about to get into the Japanese side of it, which I don't know much about. Do you have any suggestions for the authoritative reading on that? And I'll let you go. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your question, and thank you for the comments about your father. Sounds like an extraordinary man. Well, there's a lot of good stuff out there about the Pacific War. My friend Richard Frank, who's a very fine historian, is working on a trilogy now about the war in the Pacific. Max Hastings writes well about the Pacific. If you look on my website, liberationtrilogy.com, you'll see that there's a short essay on suggested readings, and there's some readings there about the global war beyond the war in Europe.
Rick Atkinson, we spent 3 hours with you in May when The Guns at Last Light first came out for our in-depth program. Asked you then, are you working on a Pacific trilogy?
Oh, Peter. I'm not. I decided some time ago that I wasn't going to do the Pacific, that 15 years was long enough on World War II. And so I've begun working on another trilogy, but it's on the American Revolution. And it has had it's captured my imagination since I was a boy, as it has for many of us. And I've been at it in earnest now for probably 3 months, and I've got a long way to go. It's a whole different set of archives, among other things, a different century, needless to say. But I do see resonances. It's the beginning of this army that I write about in World War II. I see parallels between Washington and Eisenhower that are very surprising to me sometimes. They have more in common than they don't have in common. So that's what I'm doing. It's another long project. It'll take me probably 4 or 5 years to do the first volume alone.
Bob in Dallas, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for taking the call. You already answered one of the questions I had.